Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Middle Georgia Spotlight. I'm your host, Jack Ellis. Thank you so much for joining us this week. This program is made possible by Caduceus Medicine and J. Franklin Automotives, and of course, we give thanks to the people here at WMUB, Channel 38 at Mercer University. But I hasten to add that Mercer University or Channel 38 is not responsible for any of the views expressed on this program. Throughout the month of February, as you know, it's Black History Month throughout our nation. And we've been focusing on Black history throughout this month, and this will be our last segment. We're going to air it on two different weekends on Black history. And we have as our guest, again, who is the chairman and professor of African American Studies at Mercer University, Dr. Chester Fontenot. I couldn't think of anyone more suitable and more prepared to discuss and bring a conclusion to the discussion of Black history than Dr. Fontenot. Welcome to our program.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Good to be back.
Well, as I said, this month, Black History Month, started as Negro History Week by Carter G. Woodson.
1926.
1926. Grew to be a whole month, and a lot of people used to make fun of the fact that they gave us the shortest month of the year.
Right.
And of course, it's not important how long it is. I guess the most important thing is the information that's disseminated and how do we educate not only African Americans, but all of America as to the contributions and other trials and tribulations that Black people have suffered in this place that we call the United States of America.
Right. Yeah, and when Dr. Woodson, Carter G. Woodson, established Negro History Week, had nothing to do with anybody giving us, anything. He just said, okay, this is going to be symbolic of from slavery to freedom, because it was a week that used to be called President's Week, right? And so it began with the birthday of George Washington, and then ended with the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, symbolically from slavery to freedom. When I was in college, we decided in 1970 that a week was not enough. So we took the whole month. We just decided we're going to take the whole month. No one gave it to us. We just said this is going to be Black History Month. And then a bit later, then the President of the United States declared it to be Black History Month. So that's the process.
What's the significance, not only to Black people, as I said, but all people to know this history? Because it's such a rich history, and it's good, it's bad, and it's ugly.
Well, the full history has to be told, of America. And when you leave out Black people, you leave out Jewish people, you leave out, Asians, Hispanics, Latinos, et cetera. You're not telling the full history. You're only telling part of it, and the history that is being slanted from a particular perspective, namely that of white males. So, but also, people of African descent were so instrumental in building this country. This country is built on the backs of people of African descent. The economy was built on slavery, for example.
That's why they were brought here to do the work.
Yes, and so many of our cities, substantial parts of our cities were built by people of African descent. The very White House itself was built by slaves, as was the Capitol building in D.C., So, to hide that, and to then turn around and then teach young Black people that their ancestors didn't do anything, that they had no part significantly in the building of this country. It's just flat out lie. So it's basically, correcting. It's more of a corrective than anything else. And everyone needs to know this. Everyone needs to know our story. Everyone needs to know the story of Jewish people, of Asian people, of Hispanic people, of Native Americans, et cetera. That we are all here and we all make serious contributions to this place called America.
Now, what is the responsibility of academicians such as yourself and others? What do you have a more of a burden, not a burden, but more of a responsibility to make sure not only the story is told, but it's told correctly.
Certainly, certainly. That we're almost kind of gatekeepers for the culture, you might say, because most people do not either have the wherewithal, the training, the preparation, the access, the resources to go out and do all this research. That's what we do in academic life, right? That we research, we write about it, we think about it, we talk about it, we disseminate information. And so,
and hopefully we're reading it.
And hopefully we're reading it, right? But we put it out there,
Yeah.
to be read. And so certainly there's a huge responsibility on those of us in academic life.
I mentioned that for a reason. As you said, 1926. And you said about how these cities were built. Well, we are here in Macon, Georgia.
Right.
Even though we broadcast throughout the Middle Georgia area, and we're called the Middle Georgia Spotlight, but we're talking about Macon, Bibb County in particular. Was settled in 1823.
Right.
And so 1923 would have been the 100th anniversary. So when someone else tells a story, rather than people look like the people they're telling the story about, the story can get twisted. Case in point, I'm going to read for you a paragraph, if you permit me, from a book that was written by White Macon, documenting the history of black people from 1823 to 1923, the 100th anniversary of our city. The 200th anniversary is right around the corner.
Right.
But this is what they said. First of all, of 177 pages of documented history of Macon at that time that they documented, they dedicated 5.5 pages to Negroes. But it says, it says the title Negroes and it's slavery. The first settlers in Macon brought with them several Negro slaves, and as other settlers came and brought their slaves, the Negroes increased in numbers. Many of the offsprings of the first Negroes are yet living in and around Macon. They are among, get this, the most worthy and prosperous of the Negro citizens. Goes on to say, after emancipation, many of the slaves remained in the service of their former masters, and there spent the rest of their days. But this what got me. A few of but it goes on to say, it is said that among these slaves were some very unusual Negroes, many of whom by their obedience and faithfulness merited the kindly feelings of their masters. And I could go on. But so what is this saying? That it's saying that we were obedient, that slaves should have been happy, and that they were not should not have considered themselves in bondage, that they were obedient, so therefore they were happy and they were faithful.
Well, there was that train of thought, and it still exists today, that slavery wasn't all that bad, and that black people, in fact, were done a favor by being enslaved because they were uncivilized before then, et cetera. And then, so the slave owners, they did them a favor. They introduced them to Christianity. They were converted. They learned the value of hard work. They learned to obey people,
as though they were savages before.
Right. They learned the English language, for example, and all of that, and they were introduced to civilization in ways that they had not been and would not have been if they had stayed in Africa. Okay, so slavery wasn't all that bad. In fact, slavery was something that was good for people of African descent. But then also, when you read that, my mind went to you're talking about after emancipation, numbers of former slaves now stayed with people who had previously owned them. We find some of that to be true. It wasn't as widespread as they are indicating there. But some of the reasons for that was slave masters had deprived black people who were slaves of any capacity to be independent.
No education.
No education.
No money.
No land.
No land.
No land. No houses. Nothing. Right. And so all of a sudden you are free, but you have nothing. Right. In Booker T. Washington's autobiography, Up From Slavery, he said when slavery ended, it was important to do two things, right? First, leave the plantation. Even if you went back, first you had to leave it, right? To establish the fact, I'm free now, okay? And then second, change your name, right? So, you know, and then we find other folks looking at slavery, right, who had been slaves themselves, and these slave narratives talk about go and find your family that's been separated and putting your family back together, you know, that sort of thing, moving to some other place and that kind of thing. So the story is much more complex than what they are presenting, you know, there, you see.
But it concluded, Doc, by this sentence. No greater praise can be given a slave than to say he was obedient and trustworthy.
Well, when the slave owner is writing it, certainly.
So it becomes his story.
Yes, yes, yeah. You know, I mean, certainly from the narrative from the slave owner's viewpoint, right, maintaining white supremacy, right, and slavery, is that we want obedient slaves.
And making slaves, they say, were the most obedient and trustworthy of them all.
Which is not
but
true.
We know that's not necessarily true. Now, so here you are at Mercer University, a school that was founded during slavery.
1833.
Moved to Macon, even during slavery.
And Jesse Mercer owned slaves.
Yeah, exactly. But now you have a unique, and I don't, like I said, I don't put this burden on only you, but this is the most prestigious university, Macon State and Fort Valley State. They are newcomers, if you will. So we are approaching the 200th anniversary that these men and women put together for the 100th anniversary. We are approaching the 200th anniversary. What responsibility should Mercer University and Dr. Chester Fontenot, who is the chairman, and the Tubman African American Museum, I'm not going to let them off, and all the others that say that they are the purveyors of and the teachers of African American history, what responsibility do you have as not you as an individual, but as a professor at Mercer University, and under that Mercer University would have to make sure that this story gets told right for the as we prepare the 200th anniversary?
Well, that's what we're doing with the project that I have, Digitizing Black Life and Culture in Middle Georgia, you know, looking at these slave transaction records from 1823 until 1865. And then after that, we have chain gang records, you know, they extend up to about 1842, 1843. And so part of that, you know, direction that we're going, of course, is to offer a corrective. This is to stuff like this. You say, because when you sit there and you read these documents, there's no way that you can read these documents and say, oh, that wasn't too bad. You know, I mean, you have 8-year-old child being sold, you know, to somebody, separated from their mama, you know, or their parent. You're sitting there looking at these documents, you know, and some documents you might have, we have one document, I think it was 147 or so black people are being sold, right? And none of them are listed by name.
Just
147. Yeah, 147 listed for this particular price.
And batch.
Yeah, a batch. And then at the end of the thing is that, you know, this legal language, you know, so-and-so paid this money. Now they get these 147 Negroes and 10 cows and 40, you know, 3 horses and, you know, stuff like that. Black people being listed right along with livestock, you know, and everything else. There's no way anybody can say this is okay. This is just not okay. It never was okay, you know. So just having the documents themselves there with the narrative, you know, contextualizing it, revises, resituates, and reinterprets those kinds of stupid, ignorant things that, you know, folks have said and printed about the lives of black people here in Macon and Middle Georgia, Macon Bibb, et cetera.
Obviously, I know what you're talking about because you said the project you're working on is a project between you and the students at Mercer University and the Bibb County
Superior Court.
Clerk of Superior Court. Even though you've been on the program, talked about it briefly, but just in case some of our viewers didn't catch that program, tell us a little bit about that project.
Yeah, well, Erica Woodford, who's the clerk, of the Superior Court, when she was elected, she was doing a assessment of what the holdings were, in her office in the archives, and she went through some of these property deed books, and she found some slave transaction documents. Then she and I were at lunch, and she told me about them. And so we went back to her office, and we started going through them. And both of us, it was almost like a religious experience, to actually see these documents here. And so we decided, well, let's see how many of these documents there are, and what we can do with them. And then we started working with them. Mercer gave us a grant, brought some students, on board, and then we started finding these documents. Make a long story short, we have about close to 900 of these slave transaction documents in the property deeds records, in the archives. And what we're doing—
And it's a matter of public record we're talking about.
It's a matter of public record, certainly, and at some point, but at a point when we get them such that they're user-friendly, then the public will have will have access to them, right? Certainly, right? Right now, we're still working with them and verifying,
Sure.
Documents. We don't put stuff out there that's not true, right?
Yeah.
It's not,
Sure.
et cetera. So we're verifying things. And so we have a database where the documents will be, right? It would be searchable, index, so that people can go, I wonder if my great-great-grandfather was in here or something like that. They try to search, for it. And then there'll be some other kinds of applications, for it in terms of people who want to do things like genealogy, others who want to have personal narratives where they can then teach, about a particular period in Georgia history, right here in Macon, Georgia. What happened to black people between the years 1823 and 1842 or something like that. They can pull the documents, and actually kids can be looking at these documents sitting in the classroom, that kind of thing. So it's going to be, it's going to take control of the narrative, the master narrative that has de-emphasized what happened to us and just tried to put it all together and these kind of debunking statements that are— No, it gives full. What we're doing is we're restoring these people to their full humanity. And that's what we're really trying to do, and that's what we will be doing, right?
And when do you expect this to be complete? I know it's a
Well,
tedious task, but when do you expect?
We're going to roll out part of it, right, within the next month or so.
Oh,
we're going to roll out part of it just so people can see this is what we're doing.
Well, it's just
kind
around
of
the
thing.
corner.
Right, because we have 17 volumes of the property deeds records, over 900, about 900 transaction records. We'll roll out part of it, probably the first couple of volumes or something like that, once we get them all verified. Yeah. And we'll roll those out and have, a big kind of coming out
good
situation.
I can't wait to see it. Right. I'm part of a national project on reparation. I'm very big on reparation. I'm not asking your opinion on it, but I'm very big on reparation. And I do it for my great-grandmother, one of those people that you all are researching, and her offsprings are one of those people. My great-grandmother, Judy, I don't know what her name was in Virginia, because whoever owned her, it just says she was sold from Virginia, Northern Virginia, to Macon, Georgia, to a man by the name of Jack Ellis. She was born in 1837, that we know. She arrived here in 1850, that means she was 13 years of age. She gave birth to 5 children prior to my grandfather, prior to slavery being over. My grandfather was born in 1868, but her last born was a girl born in 1858. But there was 4 other boys, and one of the boys, so she started having babies shortly after she arrived here. But one of the boys was sold to a Colbert and went to another plantation. Yeah. But all the rest of them was named Ellis. And through our research, through my family's research, we have finally connected with Colbert. He wound up in Cincinnati, Ohio. How he got there, we don't know. But he's my great uncle, my grandfather's brother, but he had a different name. So when you mention about changing names, because we change our names often depending on who owned us at the time.
Yeah, and then after slavery ended, well, you know, slaves just had one name.
Yeah.
Okay, and so.
But you
after
took the
slavery,
name of the owner.
Some of them did, right?
My grandmother, my
yes,
great-grandmother did.
Some did.
That's
right.
how she became an Ellis.
Yes, some did, right? There are slaves who took the name of whoever owned them, right? And some of them took the name because the owner was not bad person, right? And
In the
treated
scheme
them
of things.
in the scheme of slavery, okay?
Yeah.
All right, that kind of thing. So they took the name. Oh, for a slave owner, he wasn't bad, you know, so they took his name, right? But sometimes they would take the name of the previous owner because he was terrible. And the last thing he wanted was a bunch of black folk walking around with his name. And so they would take the name,
But
his
they had
name.
to follow the mother. Didn't they
and-
have to follow
no,
the...
not after slavery ends.
after slavery ended, I mean,
ends.
but
After
during
slavery
slavery,
ended.
you had to follow your mother.
During slavery, black people didn't have last names. They just had the first name.
But if they had one, it had to be the name of
They
the
didn't
mother.
have last names.
Okay, all right,
Not if they were slaves.
okay.
Right, if
But
they
I
were
thought
free.
if they were owned, I got the name of
They were-
Ellis because my mother, my great-grandmother, was sold to a John Ellis.
Yeah,
and
and
she
then
became his property.
She took the name after slavery ended, probably. Right?
No, it was prior to slavery.
Well, then that's an unusual case.
Yeah.
But in most parts, slaves didn't have
I mean,
last
prior
names.
to the end of slavery.
Right, so slaves didn't have last name. But also slaves, after slavery ends, you have black people changing their name, taking names of people that they wanted to be like, or they heard of, that they admired. So that's why you have so many black people that name Washington or Smith or something like that, you say, because they took the name of famous people who they admired, wanted to be like. So you have this
Yeah.
changing of, this name.
But from that, when you look at that, look at you, and even myself. I'm sitting here talking about my great-grandmother. That's not too long ago. This is my father's grandmother. That they estimated that from North Virginia to here was like 700 miles, and they've gone back with the steps and that. That would be 1.5 million steps that she took, and not only her, but all the other people who came that far. And most of them did have to walk because, no trains and things of that nature. But, so my point is, the question I want to ask is that, how important is it for all of us to do our research and try to know as much about our heritage, our people, as possible, because coming out of that have come some people who have accomplished quite a bit. So you can only imagine what could have been accomplished had they had opportunities early on.
Right. Well,
That's a two-part question, basically,
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
what responsibility we have
Right.
to do our own research, our history, and about the...
Yeah, well, most people really don't have the capacity to do this kind of work, this kind of research. Most people don't, and there's no swipe against them. They just don't have that kind of capacity. I don't have the capacity to be a plumber, do a plumbing. That's not where my talents are, right, and my training. So those of us who do have that capacity and have that training, can in fact help people. I mean, we get calls all the time. I get emails all the time, people who looking to help to find the ancestors, things like that. And I'm not really a genealogist or anything, so I send them to people who are, But so those of us who have the skills and the resources and stuff can then help others. Now, those people who do have the capacity, to do this, kind of work. At some point, probably should,
with
if
the
they have
help
a
of people
desire.
like the clerk,
Right,
and especially if you have the information available. Because when it dawned on me, when we finally, in my family, and I'm sure this is not unique, in my family, when we discovered that my grandfather had a brother that was also born and had an Ellis, but because he was sold to someone else and had taken the name of Colbert, I mean, we could be marrying our ancestors, our kin, if you will. And I just digress a minute and say that's one thing that I like about Africa, especially East Africa, probably West Africa as well, that if you're from a particular clan from way back and you know that clan, that you cannot date or marry anyone from that clan. But where we had no such way of doing that here.
Yeah, and you know, you have completely different social and cultural situations. You know, where you have in Africa, various parts of Africa, where you have people who are not mobile. You know, so they grew up, they lived, they died, they married, they raised their kids within probably about
And
a
the
20
oral history is so
without
strong.
a 20 or 30-mile radius of where they were born. You see, and so people are interconnected. You all know all those folks. You know, that kind of stuff. You know, there's another part of the clan, the family, that live 30 miles from here, you know, that kind of stuff, and you know that. So it's a little bit easier to say, okay, you are an Igbo of this particular family, you know, with this particular family connections, so don't marry anybody in, you know, that particular, you know, family, you know, and all that. A little bit harder in America, where we're much more of a mobile culture, and the histories are kind of mixed up, you know, as well, so it becomes more difficult.
But coming from this, what we call America's greatest sin, and we like to look at the good, but that's the ugly we are talking about. You know, when you say people just snatching your humanity away from you. But out of that, and we have about 2 minutes, I want to give you an opportunity to, what does it say about the American Negro, as we were referred to, or the black man, that he can come from that, and we get a professor at Mercer University, or we can get, even though President Obama's people were not slaves because they came from his ancestors in Kenya, but other people who have risen to high heights. What does it say about the capacity of black people?
Well, it's a strength of character. First, with strength of character, also is faith in God, you know, and that God, I mean, you find all the way throughout the African American tradition that there's a strong, almost unshakable faith that God is with us, you know, and that we can do this, we can achieve this because God is with us. God is on the side of right. God does not like slave owners. God doesn't like segregationists, you know, et cetera. God doesn't like people who do injustice, et cetera. God is for us, right? And so you have this very strong faith tradition, you know, with people of African descent. And then you also have a very strong work ethic and achieving excellence.
In spite of the narrative that is
education.
trying to be put in, that they're lazy, shiftless, and all of that.
Right. And so you have very strong work ethic, strong ethic that says we have to be better than the other folks, you know, in order to get what we're going to get, or get half as much. We have to be twice as good to get half as much, you know, et cetera. And so you even have black people who themselves were uneducated, didn't have many opportunities, but they wanted them for their children.
Yeah.
You know?
But we're going to have to stop here because of our time. But let me tell you how proud I am of you and where you sit. And I'll tell you why. My father was a groundskeeper at that university when I was a boy, and I used to go help him prune the trees. And I never thought I would live to see a day that a black professor, a PhD, would sit at Mercer University. Nor did I think I'd ever live to see the day that a black man would sit in City Hall
Exactly.
as the mayor. So thank you very much for sharing with us, and thank you for what you do there and the project that you're working on. Good luck with it.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
We've been talking to Dr. Chester Fontenot, who is a professor of African American Studies here at Mercer University. We'd like to thank you all so much for joining us this week. Until next week, I'm your host, Jack Ellis. Goodbye.